Good morning at KDN. I'm meteorologist Daniel Phillips. We have the 10 o'clock advisory coming in now for Hurricane Laura. Those who may have missed it, Laura became a hurricane at about 7:15 this morning with winds at about 75 miles an hour, starting to show some signs of intensifying and had some pretty good structure coming off of the Cuban coast. So something that we're going to have to watch here over the next day or so is how strong can Laura get between now and the coastline. Getting out over some very warm water right now, and we may see intensification today fairly slow, but I would imagine that at some point Laura is going to take off, expecting it to be a major hurricane by the time it makes landfall. Landfall still expected right up the mouth of the Sabine Pass. Here's the latest coming in for the National Hurricane Center. This coming in at 10 o'clock this morning. This is their intermediate advisory. They've nudged to the west just a little bit right here. You've nudged it over from Cameron Parish out over towards the Sabine Pass, and this goes along with what we had been seeing from some of the model data that was coming in this morning. Now, do not take your eye off the ball here. Even if it nudges westwards just a little bit, the impacts from this are going to be felt all along Louisiana. Now, the winds may stay confined to the center, and the winds may not expand out quite as much, but that surge is still going to be significant. And we're going to take a look at that here in just a little moment. So a Category 3 storm a little earlier here, instead of reaching Category 3 strength right at the coastline, it's a Category 3 with 115 mile an hour wind still sitting off the Cameron Parish border. And why that's important is with a bigger storm out there, that's more water that's getting pushed up, and it's getting pushed up into this part of the coastline, which curves like this. So it's like a little cove, and you're forcing all that water in there. Right now, expecting 9 to 13 feet worth of storm surge where this thing comes on shore. A lot of the Acadiana coastline still hatched in for the 7 to 11 foot storm surge. And again, that is taking into account a slight westward bend. That's why we cannot get too focused on where this thing is headed, because you're going to feel the impacts all across the coastline. Stays a Category 1 storm as it gets up along the border there. That's going to take it up through the Toledo Bend area and then eventually on and out of the region. Again, still looks like it's going to be moving quickly, which is good news. We want this thing out of here as fast as we can get it. We're going to see the impacts regardless. We don't want to prolong any of those impacts. Warnings are coming down now. You've got hurricane warnings out the other side of the border. They're in the process of spreading out along the coastline here as well. I would imagine that we've got warnings that are posted up along the Acadiana coastline, and I think that we start to see the warnings coming down as well for areas that are northwards of I-10. Regardless, tropical storm watches have been in effect. We had said that this was going to be the case, so we'll be on the lookout for watches and warnings here as we go through the rest of the day today. As I had mentioned earlier, even though this track has shifted just a little bit, the storm surge threat is still significant. And in some areas, the storm surge threat looking worse now than it did earlier. And that's because the storm is strengthening quicker and because of where it's coming on shore. So even if it comes on, even still out over towards the Beaumont area, even if it pushes out more so towards Galveston, you've still got all this water that's coming up on this part of the coastline. So you are still going to see major coastal flooding take place as this thing comes on shore. And right now, you're still going to see a lot of the winds right along the border to go along with everything as well. So from about Vermilion Parish border right here, just the other side of Vermilion Bay, all the way through to the Sabine Pass, you're looking at about 9 to 13 foot storm surge. That's up from what we had been thinking earlier. Right along the Sippermore Point area in the Vermilion Bay, you're probably talking 7 to 11 feet through this stretch right here. Eastern parts of the bay will still see water coming up, but you're probably talking the magnitude of about 3 to 6 feet there south of Morgan City, up along some of the marshes of South St. Mary Parish, and then 6 to 9 as you get out just over towards Beaumont. And then again, you've got Galveston just south of that, and they're probably talking the magnitude of about 4 to 6 foot storm surge. The worst of the storm surge, again, still sits in southwest Louisiana, even though that track has changed just a little. Doesn't change a whole lot with our impacts. Now, I'm going to get in. We're just getting this information in here, so I'm going to go in. I'm going to do a deeper dive on all of this stuff and get that posted over to KATC.com. But right now, the messaging is going to stay the same. We're still expecting widespread coastal flooding rains associated with this as well as some significant wind damage. Now, if the track continues to shift towards the west, it may pull some of the rain and the wind along with it, but it may not pull it far enough to get Acadiana out of it. And the further west you are, the more of those impacts you're going to continue to see, even as that thing drifts towards the west. There's going to be an intermediate update coming up at 1 p.m. That's when they go in, they kind of adjust pressure totals and wind totals, see if the thing is strengthening or not. We get another round of model data that's going to come in about 2:15 today. We should get the final suite in from the European models. And then the next update from the National Hurricane Center, the next track update, that comes out at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. Again, we're looking to see, is this westward bend, is this a trend, or is this kind of a throwaway thing that it's doing early on this morning? Don't get too fixated on it, though. The cone still incorporates southwestern parts of Louisiana, and we're going to continue to see impacts from this. Even if it comes on shore out over towards Texas, those impacts are going to be felt all along the coastline. So going to go in there, do a deep dive on the forecast, get an article up, posted to KATC.com probably within the next hour or two. I'm going to update all of the impacts, tell you what you should be looking for with the 4 o'clock advisory today. Live in the Weather Lab, I'm meteorologist Daniel Phillips.